Okay, hi everybody, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you ever so much for joining us for this afternoon's webinar. We're just going to wait a moment or two to allow everyone to arrive and to filter into the room. So please do just let us know in the chat box which city you are joining us from today, just to give us an idea of where in Ukraine or further afield you are joining us from. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to run through some sort of etiquette for today's session. So first of all, just let you know, the chat box is there. And when you're using it, please make sure you are sending your messages to everyone rather than just hosts and panelists so that you can all join in the conversation. Okay, so that's really important. So click on everyone, not hosts and panelists. If you have any very specific questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen as well. But don't use that for general chat, for specific questions only. Also, just to say that I know that certificates and recordings are important to you. You will be receiving both tomorrow afternoon. So we will send you an automated email from Zoom that will include the recording to the webinar. So if you can't stay for the whole time, that's okay. And you'll also have a certificate that you can download and add your name into from the same email, okay? So without further ado, I'm just going to hand over to Diana from Linguist, National Geographic Learning Ukraine, who's going to do a little bit of introduction about the work that they are up to at the moment. Diana, over to you.
Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alex. My name is Diana Galavani. I'm a representative of National Geographic Learning in Ukraine, and I work in Linguist company, which is the official representative of National Geographic Learning in Ukraine. Here you can see my contact details in case you have any questions of any books, or you need some consultation or maybe seminar, or you would like to choose a book, but you're not sure which one exactly suits your needs, please contact me. I will be happy to help you. Also, I would like to say that there is a great range of literature from National Geographic Learning in Ukraine. And here, for example, also you can see the site where you can find some samples, read the information, and order the books. It is called linguist.ngl.com.ua. There is in the catalog section will be different books that you can study, get to know better, and after that probably take consultation. Also, we have lots of useful materials like blog articles, recordings of the webinars for teachers, and thankfully to National Geographic Learning, we also are managed now to share useful things for your online lessons. You can find this online study part on our site where you can find different video lessons, stories, worksheets that you can use with your students. So please visit and you can use them as much as you can. If you are interested in the books, you would like to order some, maybe for the next year, or you are just thinking about that, visit the site linguist.ua, where all the books are, where you can find those buttons that will lead you to our sales representative. And for teachers who are interested in just maybe one book, who would like just to maybe shop something on methodology, we have internet shop, shop.linguist.ua. There is very quickly and easily you can order anything. Thank you very much for the attention. I think now it's time to start why we are here.
Thank you, Diana. Yeah, so we are here today, of course, to listen to Hugh. Hugh Dellar is an author, teacher trainer with over 20 years of experience in ELT. But you wouldn't know it looking at him, right?
It's actually almost 30 years.
Okay,
now.
This needs to be updated. 30 years then.
30 years next April.
I'm updating it.
Terrifying.
So there we go. So yeah, Hugh is the co-founder of Lexical Lab and has co-written the methodology book Teaching Lexically And of course, he is the co-author of the Outcomes series published by National Geographic Learning. An all-round good egg. So Hugh, thank you so much for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me just sort my screen out and then I will begin. So yeah, thank you very much to Deanna and to Alex and to Linguist and Nat Geo Learning for making this possible. It's a real pleasure and a privilege for me to be able to talk to so many Ukrainian teachers, both in Ukraine and outside for obvious reasons. And yeah, it's important for me to be able to talk to everyone and share ideas about teaching and to, you know, maintain some semblance of normality in crazy times and to be able to talk about what brings us all together and what unites us. And hopefully what's also helping many of you kind of stay sane and get through the days, teaching and thinking about your students and trying to, you know, do the best you can in very difficult circumstances. So what I'm going to be talking about today is my own kind of journey into the online realm or the online world as a language teacher. It's funny, I was chatting yesterday actually to a Ukrainian friend of mine, and she was saying that in many ways, it was a kind of blessing in disguise that COVID preceded the war, because she had had 2 years before having to leave Ukraine, in her case, to kind of get used to working online and thinking about working online. And even though it was a real pain at that point, she now feels that it was incredibly beneficial for her because she was kind of, you know, forewarned is forearmed, etc. And for me personally, my own kind of, I don't know, relationship with technology, and particularly with technology in terms of teaching, has always been very much a kind of love-hate relationship. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I actually started teaching back in 1993, almost 3 decades ago, which is terrifying to think about. And before 2020, I basically did almost all of my teaching face-to-face, apart from a few private students, mostly, to be honest, initially through Skype back in the day. And yeah, I used mostly face-to-face teaching. And I wasn't a complete technophobe. I used emails, I blogged, sometimes I even vlogged. I made little kind of video blogs or video diaries. In my teaching, particularly for homework, I would use things like Vocab, I would use Quizlet, and maybe a few other little bits and bobs, a few other apps and various kind of digital devices. And I was engaged with what was happening in technology and in the drive towards sort of ed tech, pushing to have a larger section of the educational English language market. But I've always been very wary, very skeptical of evangelists. A few years ago, there was a guy called Sugata Mitra who did a talk at IATEFL, and I followed immediately after him. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this video, but he's the guy who won a $1 million TED contract for talking about hole-in-the-wall computers and, as he calls it, grannies in the cloud, helping students learn. And what really annoyed me about people like Sugata Mitra is the kind of lack of belief in the importance of teachers and the sort of desire to slowly privatize the public sector of the educational realm. And I had the misfortune of going on afterwards and losing my temper a little bit and beginning my talk with a rant about what I'd just seen Sugata talk about, which made me a few friends and probably some more enemies, but there you go. I guess as a teacher, as a trainer, as a technology user, I've always believed what I sort of still believe really, which is that what makes learning truly interactive And what makes students most motivated in the most meaningful kind of way isn't to do with technology. It's to do with teachers and what we bring to the classroom and to the communities of learning that we create as teachers. Okay, so for me, this has always been something that I think is important to place front and center in any discussion of any kind of teaching, online or offline. It's the absolute primary importance of the teacher, of you guys out there. However, when COVID struck, basically early on in 2020, I realized very quickly that I was in big trouble, basically. I was generally kind of making money in 3 different ways. I was doing quite a lot of overseas training. I was doing face-to-face summer schools here in London and the occasional bit of face-to-face teaching. And I was making some money from coursebook sales. And all 3 of those things kind of collapsed in the first few months of lockdown. And as a result, I was kind of forced, like many of you, I guess, probably like all of you, to kind of switch or to pivot and to start thinking about working online. And so what we did quite early on was set up a little online school, basically working with so-called non-native speaker teachers of English, or L2 speaker teachers of English, who already spoke amazingly good English and wanted to get even better. That seemed to be our kind of niche, if you like. And to begin with, I think, probably like all of you listening, I found this experience of being thrown into online teaching very much like being thrown into the deep end. It was kind of sink or swim stuff for me. And I found the overload of information very intimidating and a bit overwhelming. There was endless information about the different platforms that were available, all the digital tools that were available. Suddenly, everybody was putting out, I don't know, newsletters and blog posts and webinars and information about the tricks and tips that you could use to get the most from your online learning experience. And to be honest, being quite a lazy person myself, or a busy person, if you want to paint me in a more positive light, I decided to go for the quickest and easiest kind of fix. I got a Zoom account. I use Word doc whilst teaching on Zoom. I started using Instagram a bit more. If you're not following Lexical Lab on Instagram, by the way, please do so. We'd love to have you there with us. But basically, I didn't go overboard. I just kind of thought, what's the basic minimum I need to set up online classrooms and online ways of recording language? And how can I take it from there and get started? And 2 years down the line, basically very little's changed for me. I still run a small online school, and I would still categorize myself as basically a kind of low-tech teacher. I'm someone who believes in the power of teaching over the power of technology, if you like. Having said that, I do recognize that some things will never be the same. For those of you who've gone into online teaching and you haven't yet gone back to face-to-face teaching for whatever reason, okay? And, you know, obviously in the Ukrainian situation, there are very specific reasons for this at the moment. Some things are very different, yeah? If you are sitting down all day looking at these kind of 2-dimensional head and shoulder images of people, you lose the physicality of the classroom. I had this weird experience this year where I went to the IATEFL conference in Belfast, the first one for 3 years. And I met people that I'd only known online before, including some students of mine. And it's really weird because when you meet face to face, you have no idea about what people look like from the neck down. You don't know if they're tall or short or thin or fat or how they dress or anything. So you do lose that kind of physicality that you get in a face-to-face classroom. And in some ways, I guess, again, like many of you, I experience this as a kind of loss. I miss being close to people. I miss the possibility of talking to one pair and being able to overhear what someone else over there is saying. Obviously, in breakout rooms on Zoom, you can't do that. That option is removed for you. I miss the coffee breaks. I miss the ability to look out around a room and to be able to kind of read the room from what I can see, to pick up on who's feeling what, who's got a question face, who's daydreaming. Much, much harder to do on Zoom, even if you're using a kind of gallery setup where you can at least see people's faces. I also came to the conclusion that there's basically not much point in continuing to do things that might work well face-to-face in a kind of traditional, real, physical classroom, but don't work so well online. So things like getting students to do readings, fine in a normal classroom. Pretty weird in a Zoom classroom where everyone just sits there for 10 minutes kind of going, and you can't go round and see what students are underlining and help them, working through grammar exercises or vocab exercises where all you see is the kind of top of someone's head like that, if you're lucky. Maybe they turn their camera off or whatever. Drilling, trying to drill when you've got a class of 12 people, all with different levels of connectivity on the internet, and hearing these mad echoed kind of sentences coming back at you. I think those kinds of things probably are best just left for the face-to-face classroom and not brought into the digital classroom. Having said all of that, there are obviously positives, okay? And, one positive is, I guess for many people, you can work from home. You can teach students all over the country, all over the world, many of whom are also still studying at home for whatever reasons. And even in a digital classroom, classrooms are still social spaces. They're social arenas. And for me, it makes sense for us as teachers to exploit this and to take full advantage of the community and the social space that we create. And, at times of difficulty, whether that's COVID or whether that's the war and the occupation that people are experiencing, I think having a space where there's a community, where you're in the company of people teaching becomes even more important, and the role of the teacher becomes even more important. You don't need me to tell you that you become more than just an explainer of a foreign language. You become a kind of, a cornerstone of students' lives and experiences, and someone who can be there to kind of share and listen and empathize and help. And I think what works best online is what always works best offline and online. What works best is to do with talking, stories, shared experiences, shared ideas, pair work, group work, and looking at language, okay? And I think the basic things I've learned over the last couple of years from working online are really to do with keeping things simple, not overcomplicating things, not trying to reinvent the wheel, keeping it fresh, keeping it a little bit different, but basically keeping it human, keeping it to do with human contact and human interaction. And I think sometimes when we're working online, we get lured into this kind of feeling of FOMO, this feeling of this fear of missing out, this feeling that, oh my God, other people have moved on from Zoom. Should I be using some new platform? Oh, I'm only using Word doc. Should I be using Jamboard? Should I be using... It's really easy to kind of get sucked into this feeling of being a bad teacher because you're not using all of the latest tricks and tools. My feeling is good enough is good enough. And just because you're using more tech, it doesn't mean you're doing better teaching, okay? If you are using a course book as the kind of foundation of what you're doing in the classroom, I think it's a good idea to kind of flip it as much as possible and to get the students to do things like the reading exercises, the grammar exercises, the vocab exercises as homework, and to try to save the classroom time, that precious time where we're together online, for what's most important, which is, as I said, the stories, the human contact, the interaction, and the exploration of language, which can feed into the stories and the interaction and the human contact. I guess where I still do use tech beyond the classroom is both before the class and after the class. And I'm going to be running through just a few of the kind of things I've been doing with some of my classes where I try to use tech before and after classes to help them get more from the experience of actually being in the online class. Okay, so that's what I'm going to move on to look at, really, is kind of things that you can do using tech with your students before and after, and how you can weave that into what you do in the online classroom. I should just add at this stage that the vast bulk of my own teaching is with adults, kind of 16 up, 18 up. I realise that may not always be the case for all of you. I'm not saying you should go away and start doing everything I'm talking about. What I am saying is, here are some things I've been doing. Some of them may be useful for you. Some of them may be things you do already. Some of them may give you some ideas on things you can use or adapt with your own classes. Some of them may not be relevant, okay? It's for you to decide how you digest and use what I'm going to throw out to you, yeah? So I think one thing that I often do before class is actually use the vocabulary builder that goes with the outcome series. I'm going to show you something based on the actual outcome series that we've written and that we have. Oh, one sec. Let me just check something. Sorry. I just want to check that I'm sharing the sound properly. Yes, I am. So sorry, just ignore me. Can you all still see that okay? Yeah?
Yeah, that's fine, Hugh.
Good, good. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so those of you who know the outcome series, you'll know that we have this bespoke website called www.eltoutcomes.com. And if you go there, you can find the Vocab Builder. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about this. If you're not using outcomes, you can still do ideas based around this using language input from whatever other material that you're bringing into the classrooms. And we'll look at how that might work. Because I'm talking about tech here, I thought I'd be fancy and quite high tech, and I would actually just use a little video, okay? So I've made a video about using tech, which I'll just play you now. Every teacher knows that one of the most frustrating things that can happen in class is you get asked about the same piece of vocabulary 5, 6, 7 different times by different students, none of whom are listening to you when you explain it to the earlier student who's asked about the same thing. So one of the ways we've tried to tackle this with the outcome series is on our bespoke site, the eltoutcomes.com site. You can go there and you can send students there before the class to basically have a look at the vocabulary that we think is new in the unit that they're going to be studying. And students can download a PDF or access a PDF online. So if we go here, okay, you see we're on the eltoutcomes.com site up the top here, okay, and you click on student resources, you can see Vocab Builder PDFs. Now let's just go to say upper intermediate,
Let's click that. This will open immediately because I've already set up an account there. Okay, students will need to enter their email and set up a password. Once they're there, they can access the vocab builders for each unit. You can download them. So let's just open, yeah, there. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I'll try to move that within the screen. Yeah, so basically the way these are set up is we do it double page by double page, and we include the vocabulary that we think is going to be new for students. And it's alphabetical, double page by double page. So here you can see something like affluent. There's the pronunciation guide, tells you it's an adjective. There's a little description. If someone is affluent, they have a lot of money and they're able to live comfortably. If an area's affluent, it has expensive housing and shops that sell good quality items, and the people live there are quite rich. An affluent suburb, an affluent neighbourhood, an affluent area, an affluent lifestyle. Then there's some extra examples, okay? And it goes on like that, double page by double page. At the end of each unit, there's also a kind of self-testing thing where students can do exercises, as you can see here, based on seeing how much they noticed about some of the language that was available to them. So that shows you how to access the Vocab Builder. I'm going to talk a little bit now about things that you can actually do with the Vocab Builder and get students to do before they come to class.
So that's the end of my showing off about my technological prowess there. And you're back stuck with real me talking in real time now. So once you've got this kind of list of language that's going to come up in the next lesson, whether that's using the vocabulary builder or something you produce yourself or whatever, there's a range of different things you can do. And some of those things are very easy. You just tell the students, next week, we're going to be doing pages 30 and 31 from the book. Have a look at the Vocab Builder, read those 2 pages, okay? Very low effort, you know, doesn't require much on our part. In the end, it doesn't ultimately really matter whether students do it or not, but the good students will. It points them in a useful direction. If you want to push students a bit more, you could get them to write or record on their phones short example sentences of how they might use those words to talk about their own worlds, their own experiences, their own lives. If you think that's a bit much and you want to make that simpler, you could tell them, have a look at the pages of the Vocab Builder for pages 30 and 31, pick 5 words that you want to use and write or record some sentences of how you might use those 5 words to talk about your own worlds or experiences or lives. Okay, so you know, it might just be something like affluent, and you might say, yeah, the first time I went to Tokyo about 20 years ago now, I stayed in an area called Ginza, which is one of the most affluent areas in the whole city. It was very posh and I felt quite scruffy walking around there, as I do in lots of areas, in lots of cities, but there you go. Other things that they could do is students could record example sentences and test themselves. There's an easy way they can do this where they gap the keyword, the word that's being focused on, okay? So if they've just looked in the Vocab Builder and they have the word dominated, okay? There might be an example sentence like the economy dominated the election campaign, okay? What they do is they just record it like this. The economy, the election campaign. And then you wait and then you say dominated, okay? And you can just record that on your phone. And what that means students can do is, whether they're taking sentences or chunks directly from the Vocab Builder or they're coming up with these sentences themselves, they're making their own kind of tests, basically. And over time, those tests build up and they can go back and listen to them. They get a sense of their own progress. If they really want to push themselves, they can leave in the target word and they can gap one of the other words around the target word. So they might gap, for example, campaign, okay, to make it a bit more difficult for them. And they might say, yeah, the economy dominated the election, and they listen to it and go, oh God, yeah, dominated the election. Before the election, there's a big, oh, I can't remember. Let me listen. Campaign. Oh, yeah, I should have remembered that one. So that's an easy kind of self-testing device that students can be encouraged to create themselves. Other things that I think are good to do before lessons are to get the students to think about the speaking activities that the next lessons are going to build up to, okay? So maybe, for example, those of you who know outcomes upper intermediate, there's a unit where they do a role play at the end. They listen to a conversation of two people driving around a city, and one of them's explaining her city to her friend. And at the end, they do this little role play where they imagine they're driving a friend around their hometown or the city they're in now or somewhere they know well. You write the names of places that you imagine you're going to pass through, and you think about what you're going to say. So you're kind of thinking, right, so if you look out of the window there to your right, you will see Finsbury Park. That's the biggest park near my house, and it's actually been there for over 150 years. Believe it or not, Jimi Hendrix once played there in the 1960s. And as we come down this way, you'll see on your left the Arsenal football stadium. And, you know, you're basically thinking about what you're going to be saying like this. Well, what the students can do beforehand is they know this is what the teacher's going to ask them to role play or practice or talk about in the next lesson. And they can then do a range of different things. If they're lower level students, or they're a bit insecure, or they want to generate ideas, maybe first they record their answers in their own first language, okay? So they just do the whole thing in L1. They do it in Ukrainian, say, okay? And at least that way, they've generated some content. What you could then say is, listen to the L1 version that you've recorded, think about how you might say that in English. If there's anything you're not sure of, look up the English words, the L2 words, in a bilingual dictionary, okay? Make a note of it. You might just say, here's the speaking we're going to do at the end of the next lesson. Make some notes on what you might want to say. Another nice thing you can get students to do is to record themselves doing their own versions. And some of you may know these little 1-minute English videos I make. I do them on the Lexical Lab Instagram page, and I also do them on YouTube. And I know for myself that there's a kind of discipline involved in having to record yourself doing something that makes you get really good at doing something. So often what I find is I record 20 seconds and then one of my kids comes in and asks me a question, and so I have to start again. And then I record 30 seconds and then I forget what I was going to say and I swear and I have to cut the video. And then I record it again and do 45 seconds and then someone rings at the doorbell and I swear again and I have to record it again. And all the time you're doing that, all the time you're recording and re-recording and re-recording and going slightly further, you're burning into your memory, you're consolidating and you're building on your ability to perform that language under time pressure in real time. And so I think recording rehearsals is really, really important because you want to get it right. And sometimes you do 2, 3, 4, 5 versions. And that repetition and layering is really important. I mean, that's how we learn to do anything, through repetition and layering. Do it again, do it a little bit differently. Do it again, do it a little bit better. You know, all areas of learning involve that kind of doing it again and adding. Once students have done the recordings and they've kind of done their own little version, well, if you're feeling incredibly diligent and you don't have much on your plate this week, You could ask them to send them to you and you just comment on them. And it might just be you comment and say, thanks very much for your recording. I really enjoyed it. I was surprised, though, that you didn't mention blah, 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 because that's the thing I always associate with Kharkiv. Why didn't you mention it? And then you might make one little comment about maybe one phrase or one expression. Or what can be done with the recordings? Nothing just yet. Keep it, listen to it after the class, see if you can do it again better. Okay, so there's a kind of building up a digital portfolio thing. Other things you could get students to do before the lesson, if you know there's a listening that you're going to do, you could get them to read the audio script. And again, you can access these through the bespoke website, or you can just kind of tell students to read audio scripts in the back of their books or whatever. And again, once they've got the audio scripts, they can read through them, they can check them. This is someone else doing this guided tour of a city, you know, and they can read the conversation of someone showing their friend round Belgrade, okay, and sort of talking about what they're seeing. Again, once you've got this, you can do all sorts of things with it. You could just tell the students to read the audios without listening, okay? You could get the students to read it aloud. They could even record themselves reading it aloud. If they're kind of flamboyant, show-off, experimental kinds of students, you could get them to do different voices. It's always quite entertaining, you know. What a lovely day. Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? It's been a really warm autumn. So where are we? Well, you know, you could do something like this if you wanted to. They could just read it through and they could see if the new words, if there are any new words for them in the audio script, are the same as the words that they learned from the Vocab Builder. So that kind of marries the Vocab Builder and the audio scripts a bit. They could record themselves reading it out and they could play the recording back, but they could stop it and see if they can remember the next word or the next line. So it might just be something like, what a lovely day. Yeah, it's nice. Stop. Isn't it? It's been a really warm autumn. So where are we? Well, the bit we've just been through. Okay. They could do it like this. They could also do a kind of test version where they read the audio script out themselves, but they gap one word in each line. So again, what you'd get is something like this. Yeah, I think I did a glimpse of it. You might have seen it TV. It's the place they the Eurovision Song Contest. All right, to be honest, I'm not really that on Eurovision. It's not really my thing. And they listen to it and they just kind of check that they can remember it. They can read it against the audio script and they can check how well they remember. So again, it's about helping students to focus particularly on the language that's there in the course book and work out ways of testing themselves and measuring their own progress outside of the classroom. After lessons, you can do similar kinds of things, okay? You could get students to go back and look at the Vocab Builder, or if you're not using outcomes, why not? But if you're not using outcomes, you can use whatever language input you've provided for the students, and you can get them to write short little gap-filled tests. It could just be that students use the sentences that were there in the material that you've given them or in the Vocab Builder. So in the Vocab Builder under affluent, you've got this sentence. There's a golf course there, which is used by some of the more affluent residents. And it could just be they just copy that sentence out, okay? And they bring it to class next lesson. They've got 5 or 8 or 10 of these sentences. They work with a partner. They test each other. They see how much they can remember. You want to make it harder. You include the word that was explicitly focused on in your sentence, and you gap something else from the Vocab Builder or from the language input to see if people were really paying attention, if you wanted to push people. So it could be, it's generally quite an affluent area, but there are still of poverty there. Well, those of you who were paying attention earlier when you saw the vocab builder will know that the missing word is pockets of poverty. And again, they can bring these sentences into the class and test each other next lesson. They could also write little matching exercise tests using the language input from the class, from the course book, and or from the vocab builder. So it could just be things like undergo an economic boom, climb out of poverty, live in relative affluence, said no teacher ever. Okay, and again, they're ways of getting students to go back over the language they've just studied, but also they're kind of ways of crowdsourcing, if you like, from students revision activities that are ready to go at the beginning of the next lesson. Yeah, so, you know, there you go, back to the vocab builder. You can see things like affluent there, affluent suburb neighborhood, affluent residential area, affluent carefree lifestyle, born into an affluent family, golf course used by affluent residents, pockets of poverty, generally an affluent area, climb out of poverty to greater affluence, live in relative affluence, and so on. Okay? You could also just get students to write revision questionnaires, and they could do this as a spoken activity at the start of the next class. So they could just literally take the definitions from the vocab builder or from dictionaries if you're using other material, and they could write 10 little tests like this. You know, you could tell them, pick 10 bits of vocab from the last week's lessons. Over the weekend, write 10 test questions like this. If you have a lot of money and you're able to live comfortably, you're very affluent, good, well done. And you can also say that people a very affluent lifestyle, lead, good, well done. You could also just get students to take some responsibility for making a class set of Quizlet cards. I like to do this where you delegate, like for one unit, you get one person to get the make the Quizlet cards, another unit, another person or pair of students do it. And one way I really like of doing it, it's a bit like the Cambridge exam test, where you have 3 sentences with the same missing word in each one. And maybe sometimes it's a verb, sometimes it's a noun, because English is weird like that. So you might have something like this. There's been a in house prices. The city's undergoing an economic the area is starting to and you turn it over and you check your answer. Hopefully you're all thinking, boom, boom, is the answer boom? You turn it over. There's been a boom in house prices, undergoing an economic boom, starting to boom. Okay, so again, you can use the language input and or the vocab builder to encourage students to take a bit more responsibility for making material that allows them to make their own learning a bit more visible, that allows them to measure their own learning a bit more. Other things you can do, maybe 1 or 2 days after class, you just record 10, 15 chunks from what you've studied, and you say them twice at normal speed, and you send them as a sound file. So it might just be something like, you just say something like this: an affluent area, an affluent area. Number 2, based in the district, based in the district. Number 3, booming industry, a booming industry. And what you then do with this, okay, you send it, students listen, they write down what they think they hear. Either you send them the answers just by email or something, or they check their answers by looking back at the vocabulary builder or the course book or what they did in the last lesson. They can just keep this already as a kind of a record of how much they've learned. When the students say to you, I'm not making any progress, which all students feel, from time to time, you can tell them to listen back to the sound files and tell you, Did you know all of that language before you started the course? No, you didn't. I know you didn't. Well, there's 100, 150, 200, 300 bits of language that you didn't know before the course that now is sitting somewhere in your head. You want to push them a bit more, they can write or record their own sentences using those chunks or using those collocations, okay? And they can bring them to class and compare. So it might be something like, it used to be a very affluent area, but now it's a bit run down. I don't know, you know, ed tech or cybersecurity or, you know, drone making. It's a booming industry nowadays. There are lots of factories based in the district. Yeah, and they can just bring them in and compare them and explain why they've come up with the examples that they've come up with in the next lesson. So again, it feeds forward as well as looking back. You can also encourage students to make, or you can just record and send yourself bilingual records of new language. Yeah, and you know, one of the great superpowers most of you have is you're bilingual, maybe even trilingual, you know, in your own language use. And I think particularly for low-level learners, having a teacher who speaks your own mother tongue is really, really important. And what you can do is you can give the students the L1 version of the language first, you then pause, you then say the English version. So, you know, if I was teaching you Indonesian, for example, which is my main foreign language, I might teach you something like, okay, you ready? Let's use the English first. Good morning. Good morning. And then you think, oh yeah, we did this in class last week. What's the Indonesian again? And then I say, selamat pagi, selamat pagi. Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Selamat sore, selamat sore. How are you? How are you? Apa kabar? Apa kabar? And you can listen and you can stop and you can see if you can remember the foreign language, and then you listen and then you test yourself. And again, the beauty of this is students can sit there on the bus, you know, in the basement, in bed. They can sit there wherever they are with their headphones on or just with their phones to their ears, listening to this stuff and soaking it up. And again, for students who feel they're not making much progress, well, there's evidence that they are. They've got these bilingual lists of loads and loads and loads of language that they didn't know before they started the course with you. So that's confidence building, and it gives you some tangible sense of your own improvement. Again, what else you could do is after the lessons, students could record in pairs. Or they could just record, again, their own kind of monologue versions of what they've done in class. So if what you've done is a listening and some vocab and some grammar and some practice that is built around this conversation practice, what you can then do is to say, so I know you recorded a basic rehearsal version before class, go home or go outside or go online, record a better version using some of the language that came up in class today. What students might then do is just share it with each other. You know, they might email it to you. You collect 4 or 5 of these, or you collect the 3 best, or the 1 that you like the best, or the 2 that you like the best. You share them with the whole class. And you just say, you know, I don't know, here's Ksenia's driving tour of, you know, Dnipro or whatever. And yet you have those little files that you can share with each other. And that's lovely. Again, that's a way to revise and consolidate what you've done in class, but in a very localized, more personally meaningful kind of way. Also, what you can do if you want to expand on the conversation practice, and if you're using outcomes in particular, you can go onto the Bespoke website and you can watch extra videos. So on the video, there's a guy doing a little guided tour of Thessaloniki in Greece. and you can watch the video, you can write what you hear about traffic, the White Tower, ouzo. You can make a note of any words or phrases that are difficult for you. You can read the whole video script, and you can fill in the gaps in the video script yourself again. And again, this revises and recycles and consolidates a lot of the language that came up in the course book connected to having this particular kind of conversation. Maybe you do this and then you re-record your own version, trying to use 2 or 3 new phrases from the video version that you watch online. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to see if we have time for any questions that come up. I should just finish by saying, please do check out our website, www.lexicallab.com, to find out more about what we do, about our online teacher development, language development courses. If you're on Instagram, please find and follow Lexical Lab. Hopefully next summer, not this year, we'll be running face-to-face teacher development courses here in North London. And if anyone wants to contact me at any point for any reason, with any questions whatsoever, you can always get me. It's hugh@lexicallab.com. Okay, happy to share the PowerPoint or answer any questions anyone's got. And I should also just mention the Nat Geo webinars and the Nat Geo blogs and the Nat Geo Facebook and Twitter sites there, okay? As well as the linguist sites, of course. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just close the PowerPoint. And if anyone has any particular questions you wanted to ask or anything you'd like further thoughts on, please do just type your question into the Q&A box and I'll have a look there and see what comes up. Okay.
Thank you. That's a fantastic talk, as always. Insightful, lots of great ideas. It's nice to have such kind of, personal touch as well, I've got to say. There's a real connection there. It was very quiet in the Q&A box throughout, so if there are any questions, please do pop them into the chat box if you want to challenge Hugh. It doesn't have to be just about what we're talking about today. It could be about anything teaching or English language teaching related that you would like to ask him. The challenge has been laid down for you there. What can you come up with?
Oh, Arthur, yeah. If I had £1 for every time I was asked this question, man. The answer is, at the moment, there are no plans for the proficiency level, but please feel free to write to my publishers and express your interest and enthusiasm in such a book existing, because it may mean it happens at some point in the future. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to write one at some point, but it's not in the pipeline at the moment. What is in the pipeline is 3rd edition of Outcomes coming out next year, all 6 levels. So, keep an eye out for that.
And I'll add to that as well, that will come on a digital platform as well. So National Geographic Learning, we've got a new online platform, which all of our new titles are going on to, which has online practice and has an ebook for the students and classroom presentation tool for the teachers.
So that's the question there from Zhenya about the book.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly that.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. What advice can you give when it comes to improving business English writing skills? Yeah, so I guess my advice to the anonymous attendee would be 2 things, really. You probably, if you can, you need to see samples of the writing that those students are doing already. If people are already working in business contexts, they'll often have emails or reports or whatever that they have to write themselves. The best thing to do, I think, is to work directly from their own output and help them to produce better output in future. If you're not in that position, I think you need to be clear about what kind of exact business writing those people need to do. And you need to source, or maybe even write yourself, models for that kind of writing. and you need to work with the models and show students, you know, here's a typical model of how I don't know, like a sales report works for a company like yours. Here's what it looks like. Here's some of the language that comes up in it. Now you try and write one. But I think you really need to either be working from raw student material or from models that show students how to do those kinds of writing at a level that they're already at. Yeah, I hope that answers that one. Let's see.
There's a question in the chat box that's flown by from Ksenia. What is your favorite short or your favorite quick lexical game?
It's quite a difficult question. So my favorite thing that I like doing in class, and again, this is the pedagogy of a lazy person here, is I basically just like to say to students at the beginning of a lesson, okay, going to give you 3 minutes, have a look back at your notes for the last couple of weeks and choose 5 bits of language that you most liked and that you most enjoyed learning, okay? Make a note of them, write them down, okay? I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. Don't tell each other or don't tell anyone in your group your words. All I'd like you to do is to elicit the words that you've chosen from your partner, okay? And maybe what you've done is you've written something like the economy is booming, okay? And what you then do is say, okay, so my first word, imagine the economy, it's doing very well. It's going up. New businesses are opening. The economy is, do you remember? The economy booming. Well done. Wow. And the beautiful thing about that is it's instant revision that you don't need to do any preparation for. It's self-selecting on the part of the students. It gets them to practice paraphrasing and explaining. And on top of that, what I might then do is to make a few notes, and as a roundup to that section, I might teach a few extra things. So I might just say something like this, you know, the economy is booming at the moment. Okay, new businesses are up. Sorry, my typing is very erratic when I'm typing quickly. Let me just make a quick note. And I'll make sure that goes out to everyone so you can all see it. New businesses are up all over the place. So if what they're eliciting is the economy's booming, what I'm thinking about is, so I can make this worthwhile for the students, what else can I teach them to add to what they've already got? So then I might say, great, so that was good. I heard some really great things. Lovely to see you remember so much. Let's just look at how to add a little bit to what you've got already. So yeah, you know, Ksenia, you were talking about how the economy's booming. It's doing very well. There are new businesses up all over the place. Anyone remember the missing word? Anyone know the missing word? Feel free to type your answer quickly. Let's see if anyone gets it. You don't win anything, but you get the satisfaction of being the first person to type the answer if you do know it.
They're all being a bit shy here.
I know. I'll give you 1 minute.
Oh.
No, we've just gone into thank yous now.
We have.
No one's good. Oh,
popping out.
Could be. It's not what I was thinking of, but it sort of works.
Is yours connected to the seasons?
Mine begins with S.
Yeah. Any guesses?
Go on, one more. Oh, no. You set up a business, but new businesses spring up. Oh, look, there you go, Maria.
Well done, Maria.
Congratulations. So, yeah, that's one of my favorites to do, is to kind of get them to decide the vocab they want to revise, get them to test each other. And then what I'll do is to kind of add a little bit of new information to the old information that they've been recycling and going over. And the beauty of that, from my point of view, is it doesn't require any preparation or effort on my part. So this is why I like it so much. It does require a bit of thinking on my feet when I'm in the classroom. Oh, look, everyone's saying spring now. Okay. Too late. But well done. If anyone does have any other questions that you think of and you want to get in touch about, please email me. I'm always happy to hear from people. And yeah, find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm very much looking forward to one day soon being able to come over to Ukraine and actually see people in the flesh.
Thank you very much.
So thank you once again to you, Hugh, for myself and on behalf of everybody in attending today's webinar.
Thank you.
Just to reiterate as well, I said at the start, just to remind you that you will receive an email tomorrow about this kind of time that will include a link to the recording of the session in case you missed the start, as well as a certificate that you can download and print and add your name to as well. Okay, Deanna, any final word from you?
And I just wanted to say my thank you to Hugh. That was really interesting. And I totally agree with your point that the more technology doesn't mean the better lessons. So thanks a lot. You just showed us some pretty simple and easy to use, but useful things that just...
I'm a simple man, Deanna.
That's at the beginning when we just started to use online, we tried everything, and after that we come up with 2 or 3 favorite things, and that's all. It's more than enough because you need to teach students, not just to play games.
Sometimes less is more, yeah.
That's right.
Less is more.
So thank you a lot. I was inspired, and I guess I will try these things with my adult students. I hope all others are also will be doing the same. And again, thank you very much for the support that you give to Ukrainians, that you tell about our war all over the world, and that you really care about what is happening here. So that's...
Hey, and thank you to all the teachers out there doing such an amazing job in such a difficult set of circumstances. I mean, it's very humbling for me to watch the Ukrainian teachers I know doing what you're doing in the situations you're doing it in. So, you know, I've got the easy job sitting here in my house in North London. So thank you to everyone out there.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right. It's humbling and inspiring, equal measure.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, thank you so much to all of you. Please stay safe, stay well, and we will see you all very soon for the next webinar, which I'm sure we'll be arranging very soon, right, Deanna?
Yeah.
We'll be planning already, don't you worry. We'll be there soon.
All right.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah.